The Apache Junction Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. It's Tuesday, October 23rd, 2018. It is now 7 p.m. And if everyone would join me, please, in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please, Rudy.
Commissioner Schroeder.
Present.
Vice Chair Heck.
Present.
Commissioner McGraw.
Here.
Commissioner Kreidler.
Here.
Commissioner Frank.
Present.
Chairwoman Nesser.
Present.
Commissioner Howard.
Here.
7 present. We have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda, and the first is consideration of approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion?
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair? Oh,
Yes.
Madam Chair, I once again want to express my displeasure as far as the inaccuracies or,
We're not at the minutes yet.
I'm sorry.
We're just on the agenda.
Very good.
Do you want to make a motion?
We'll go ahead and, I'll move to go ahead and accept the agenda as written.
Okay, we have a motion for the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
second.
We have a motion and a second. Can I have roll call vote, please? Or do you want just approval?
Vice Chair Heck.
Yes.
Commissioner McGraw.
Yes.
Commissioner Kreidler.
Yes.
Commissioner Frank.
Yes.
Chairwoman Nesser.
Yes.
Commissioner Howard.
Yes.
Commissioner Schroeder.
Yes.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Okay, the next item is consideration of approval of the regular meeting minutes of September 11th, 2018. And before I ask for a motion, does anyone want to make any comments?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
As I was previously saying, once again, the discussions of the topics are there, but the content is not listed in the discussion in the minutes. So once again, I'm expressing my displeasure with the accuracy.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion.
Madam Chair,
Yes?
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission accept and approve the minutes from the September 11th, 2018 and September 25th.
No, I haven't done that one yet.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
doing them separately.
Oh, okay, so I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission accept the agenda, approve the minutes from the September 11th, 2018.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please, Rudy.
Vice Chair Heck.
Yes.
Commissioner McGraw.
Yes.
Commissioner Kreidler.
No.
Commissioner Frank.
Yes.
Chairwoman Nesser.
Yes.
Commissioner Howard.
Yes.
Commissioner Schroeder.
Yes.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Okay. Now we'll move on to consideration of approval of regular meeting minutes of September 25th, 2018. Any discussion? Hearing none? I'll ask for a motion.
Oh, Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve the minutes from the September 25th, 2018 regular meeting.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Schroeder.
Yes.
Commissioner Howard.
Yes.
Chairwoman Nesser.
Yes.
Commissioner Frank.
Yes.
Commissioner Kreidler.
No.
Commissioner McGraw.
Yes.
Vice Chair Heck.
Yes.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Okay, we'll move on to the public hearings. We have one hearing tonight. Presentation, discussion, public hearing, and consideration of case CUP 5-18, a request for a conditional use permit by W4A Operations LLC, doing business as Diesel Industries. Rudy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, members of the commission, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Rudy Skevius, I'm Senior Planner. And Madam Chair,
I'm helping you out, Rudy, stop it.
You both trying to do the same thing?
Okay, this is case CUP 518. W4A Operations is the property owner, represented by Jack Gilmore of Gilmore Planning and Landscape Architecture. The request is for a conditional use permit to park large trucks, buses, RVs that are awaiting repair or awaiting pickup on a vacant B5 PD zoned property. A little bit of background, November of 2002, the City Council approved ordinance number 1168. This was a city-initiated rezoning, which rezoned about 80 acres of property on the north and south sides of Apache Trail from about Meridian to Delaware. And the intent of that rezoning was to try and preclude the development of more RV storage lots, mobile home parks, RV parks, that kind of thing. We wanted to see our main commercial corridor develop with quality retail, shopping, office, business uses. A little side note about Ordinance 1168, it was actually challenged. It's one of the, I think, one of only 2 ordinances that have gone to referendum for a vote of the city. Some folks didn't like it, so it went to referendum, and it did get approved by the voters. Folks basically said, yeah, we do want to see landscaping and improvements and design guidelines in the Meridian rezoning area. So the Romano property, the W4A property, was one of the properties that got rezoned as part of that initiated rezoning, located at 3050 West 4th Avenue. At the time, we also had a landscape code which was going through some changes. At first, when the Romanos were moving onto the property, we had a meeting with them. The landscape code said certain things at the time, and we let them know that landscaping improvements would be required. And then the code changed. The applicability section of the code changed. They have, and I'll demonstrate in just a little bit, they have a very narrow frontage on West 4th Avenue. So for various reasons, they weren't not required to do landscape improvements when they first moved onto the property. However, they were advised that should the business grow, should they move on to other parcels, then landscape improvements would be applicable to those. Over the years, the Romanos have kind of moved around in that 4th Avenue neighborhood. They have acquired 3 properties, and then they lost the properties, and then they moved, and then they moved back. So it's been quite a history. We've had issues with business licenses. The improvements have never gone in as far as the landscape and screening improvements. We've tried working with them over the years for various reasons. We finally had to write them up for a notice of violation. You have a copy of the notice of violation, and working with the city prosecutor's office, we gave them more time. They applied for a conditional use permit, and that's why we're here before you today. So a lot of history, but basically, hopefully with this CUP, we can move forward and get the property improved. This map here, not very visible, represents the Meridian rezoning area. Once again, properties on the north side of Apache Trail from Meridian to Delaware, properties on the south side of Apache Trail, basically from Meridian to the Warner alignment. This box right in here is the Safeway Shopping Center. You've got the old Kmart property, you've got the Wells Fargo Bank and that vacant lot that wraps around the Wells Fargo Bank. And then we've got some industrial uses in here. There's a storage lot right here. There's the Lamplighter RV park. There's a commercial or industrial use here. And the Romano property, the property in question is basically right here. So once again, just east of Meridian, on the north side of 4th Avenue, and then on the south side of 4th Avenue is a residential neighborhood. This is, in 2013, there was a memorandum of understanding that Development Services and the Romanos informally worked out that basically said, and this once again was around the time that they had regained control of their properties. They were going to move back to 3050 West 4th Avenue, which is this property here. Some of the folks who have lived in the city for a long time may recall this was the old Hyder Air property. This property here used to have a mobile home on it. Even though these properties have been zoned industrial, there was a mobile home on this property that has since been removed. There is the property in question, which is this property here. And then there is a strip of land that is actually part of a larger parcel to the north of the Romano property. It's kind of a T-shaped parcel. This is an RV and boat storage business, and this is an access onto 4th Avenue, which basically separates the Romano properties. The main property where the buildings are, where the main business takes place, and this is the property where they are proposing the storage of vehicles awaiting repair and waiting to be picked up. A little bit ago I mentioned the narrow driveway. This is really the main driveway onto the property. This property here is not part of the business. They're not, I don't believe that they have an agreement with the property owner to the north to use this stretch of land, so this has been an issue of contention also for a while. So this is a conditional use permit request, requesting to use the vacant B5, which is industrial by plan development zone property for the parking of trucks, semi-trucks, buses, recreational vehicles, which are awaiting repair or pickup. The city zoning ordinance requires a conditional use permit for outdoor assembly, repair, manufacturing, processing, and/or storage. And the development of commercial industrial zone properties, even storage lots, requires landscape and screening improvements. This is the zoning map. Once again, the Apache Trail is right in here. This is Safeway, the commercial uses. These are the industrial uses under Ordinance 1168 south of the Safeway Shopping Center, and the Romano property is kind of right here in the middle of the neighborhood between Meridian and 4th. This is an aerial view of the site. You can see the property which bifurcates the two Romano properties. So this is the main repair business. This is a separate lot. This is a separate lot. The CUP is being requested for this lot right here. And then to the east of the Romanos is another gentleman who has moved in fairly recently within the last couple of years. We have also been talking to him about landscaping, screening improvements, and getting him started on his conditional use permit process as well. So this is kind of a broader view of the neighborhood. You've got the storage lot to the north, there's a vacant lot, and then the Safeway Shopping Center, and you've got a residential, single-family residential neighborhood to the south, kind of an odd mix of uses. We inherited this from the county. You've got industrial zoning right across the street from single-family residential zoning. We're kind of, we have to deal with it as it is. And one of the things that Ordinance 1168 tried to do was to require, as these properties developed and/or redeveloped, the idea was to try and get street improvements and landscape improvements and screening and walls to kind of buffer the residential neighborhood from the industrial zone neighborhood. But Ordinance 1168, although it has brought us some very nice things along Apache Trail, such as Harley-Davidson, a couple of shopping centers, Starbucks, Jack in the Box, St. Vincent de Paul, a couple of other things. It's been very slow to implement on along 4th Avenue, which understandably has caused some frustrations in the neighborhood. About the only thing that new on 4th Avenue is this building here. This building was designed in compliance with our design guidelines under Ordinance 1168. However, it has a very narrow driveway, so basically this part of the property has not been improved. So once again, slow implementation on 4th, very nice implementation along Apache Trail. In your packets, you have a couple of evaluations of the criteria. Mr. Gilmore provided us with his rationale for how this request satisfies the criteria. Staff has also added our own comments. I don't think we're in disagreement. I mean, obviously there's an odd mix of uses in the neighborhood. You got industrial across the street from residential. However, we believe that with landscaping and screening improvements, some of the neighborhood concerns can be mitigated, such as the noise, the dust, the lighting, some of the incidentals that go with repairing large vehicles. So with that in mind, and with the hope and intent of further implementing Ordinance 1168 along 4th Avenue and hopefully encouraging other business owners to make similar improvements. We already mentioned the gentleman next door. Staff is amenable to this conditional use permit request. We did all the normal noticing, we did all the normal posting. I have received 2 phone calls. Folks who had general questions didn't really indicate support of the CUP. In the past, we have heard some concerns that they had with the property. So hopefully those folks are here tonight and can speak on their own issues. You also have a new exhibit in your packets, which I just gave you. The Romanos or Mr. Gilmore went around the neighborhood and they got signatures from folks in the neighborhood basically in support of the CUP request. So you have that before you. Of course, we give you your voting sheet, and we also gave you a copy of Mr. Gilmore's proposed landscape plan, landscaping screening plan for the property. And with that, Madam Chair, we do have some recommended conditions. If you read the narrative, the Romanos are asking for a little bit of time to make these improvements on the property. Of course, any CUP is good for a year to make the necessary improvements. And with that in mind, they're asking for 6 months to construct a decorative masonry fence along 4th Avenue and a 6-foot-tall chain link fence along the western boundary of the storage parcel. And the western fence would be a chain link fence with slatted or wooden slats, vinyl or wooden slats. There would not be any cross access across that property. Once again, somebody else owns a strip between the two properties. But the nice fencing and the landscaping and the screening would be along the front. And of course, we're also asking for proper access gate. They're talking about large vehicles, buses, and semis. So you need to have a gate large enough, wide enough to be able to accommodate turning movements. And that's to be reviewed by planning and engineering at the time of development. We already mentioned no east-west access through the chain link fence. And within 1 year of approval of the outside of the masonry fence, proper landscaping and irrigation improvements shall be installed. Because they're asking for a year, we are asking that the trees be upsized to 36-inch box trees. And of course, any landscape plan, irrigation plan is also subject to planning review and approval. All landscaping-related equipment to be contained on private property, not in the right-of-way. Within 1 year, the subject site shall be treated for dust control in accordance with the options in our engineering guidelines. Within 1 year of approval, a properly designed 6-foot-tall opaque non-see-through access gate be installed in the front fence. Business owners shall ensure and take reasonable precautions that outside activities are conducted in a manner that minimize negative impacts to the neighborhood, including noise, vibration, bright lighting, or other negative neighborhood impacts. Recommend that these be kept to an absolute minimum between the hours of 10 p.m. 6 a.m. daily. No outside storage or on-street parking of vehicles awaiting repair or pickup. The CUP incorporates by reference the submitted drawings. Once again, you have a copy of the conceptual landscape plan in front of you. Number 10, increases in intensity can be brought back to you for further review. We have used this condition and in other conditional use permit requests, and we go on to define what some of those increases in intensity might be. Proper building permits, of course, required for any electric work, plumbing work, future buildings, in accordance with current city codes. Basically, anything larger than 120 square feet requires a permit, or anything that's going to have electricity or plumbing in it. And storage containers also require an administrative permit. The CUP shall expire in a year if the applicants don't effect it within that time. And as always, failure to comply with the conditions of approval can be brought back to you for further review and or revocation. And Madam Chair, as always, with a conditional use permit, your decision is final unless any aggrieved individual appeals it to the City Council in writing with the appropriate fees. But otherwise, after 20 days, your decision stands. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions for Rudy?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Rudy, is this strip used by the owner between these two parcels?
The strip between the two properties?
Yeah, is it used at all?
My understanding is that there is some kind of utility installation in here. There is a gate here. I don't think it's a main access point. The main access point is on Meridian. But the gentleman is here. That he might want to speak on the issue. It is part of the property. It's not a little skinny lot by itself. It's actually part of the T, and it can be used for access. Whether it is used for access on a daily basis, I don't know, but it is an access point.
Okay, thanks.
And incidentally, Commissioner McGraw, we introduced the idea of maybe doing a land swap, but I don't know to what extent those negotiations have gone forward. The suggestion was, well, how about moving this thing over here on the east side of the property and doing just a straight swap. But once again, I think there are complications with existing utility facilities and possibly some other issues.
Okay, anyone else? None? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I will ask the property owner's representative, Mr. Gilmore, if he would like to address us.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, my name is Jack Gilmore. I've been assisting the Romanos with the preparation of this conditional use permit. Rudy's been a great help. There is some history here, and I think, I don't want to delve into that. I think the important thing is here that we worked with staff to come up with a plan, a solution that will allow the Romanos to continue their operation, and I think that's the most important feature. I think it's important to note here, of all those properties on the north side of 4th Avenue, this will be the first one that does the landscape improvement and the new screen wall. So they've accepted that. They're ready to do that because they want to be able to operate their business. Rudy mentioned the exchange of property. That was discussed, and we did meet with Mr. Jenkins, and I think, I want to call that a work in progress. I'd like to think ultimately that's going to be the best solution for both properties. It's just a matter of understanding the logistics for both properties to work. So I'd like to think that is still a possibility. And Mr. Jenkins might want to address that as well. We have reviewed all the stipulations that Rudy's shared with us, and the Romanos are prepared to satisfy those stipulations for approval. I think it will take them the full year to complete the improvements, but they are prepared to do that because they are serious about wanting to move forward and operate their business. I have a copy of the site plan, the landscape. If there are questions about that, I'd be glad to address those for you.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Gilmore?
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore, having driven past the properties in question, they're on the south side of the subject property. There's a brick wall or block wall currently is partially constructed. Was that done just based on this, or had that been around for a while? I can't tell.
That's been there for a few years, and I think that was an attempt to begin to satisfy some of the requests coming from staff. There is no gate.
Right.
So the gate needs to be installed and sized for the turning movements of those larger vehicles. So that will be part of this next effort to satisfy those conditions.
Right. Mr. Gilmore, I realize you can't probably answer this, but it's a little puzzling to us that we go back to 2013 with a memorandum of understanding that was ignored. There was violations that were issued October of 2017, and nothing's been done. And now all of a sudden, there's a commitment to get this done. I'm just curious how you're going to convince the commission that, by golly, they're serious this time.
You know, I'm late to the game. The violation was in place before I obviously got involved. I think once the Romanos understood the seriousness of the position, I think they realized that they need to satisfy these concerns from Apache Junction because they want to operate their business. So ultimately, that's the goal.
Yeah, and understand, Mr. Gilmore, I don't think any of us are trying to say we don't want them doing business, but it's difficult for us when we know that even recently as a year ago, a citation was issued that was essentially ignored. That's very puzzling that that now all of a sudden, a year later, fully a year later, we are now saying, okay, now we're going to comply. You know,
I understand the concern. I would request that the CUP be approved and give the Romanos the full year to show the city they're serious about wanting to satisfy those conditions and operate their business.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I also had a question on the memorandum of understanding. The very last sentence before city representative and Angela Romano signed it on 6/13 of 2013. Very last sentence says, Romano further understands that failure to comply with city requirements may result in revocation of the business license, subsequent code enforcement action, and fines. And as it's already been stated that in 2017, the violations took place. And I have to echo the concerns. I mean, they signed it. They acknowledged the fact that that any more violations could result in, and they're actually probably fortunate not to have lost a business license. But I have an issue. There is history, as you've already stated, going back to 2002, of ignoring city correspondence. So why the change? What makes the change? Why should we even be convinced to approve this?
There, you know, part of the history was the Great Recession. I suffered through that myself. My own business did. Everybody suffered through that process. So there's a number of years in there where business was slow for everybody. I don't know if they were in a position to deal with all those requirements at that time. I can't speak for the Romanos specific to those issues. The only thing I can say at this point is they want to move forward. There's been an effort to work with staff, and we have met with Mr. Jenkins to try and work out that exchange. That, I think, is still a work in progress, I hope. We're still going to pursue that. But ultimately, they just want to be able to run their business. So I would request, again, that you guys give them the opportunity to show you that they are serious and they want to satisfy those conditions.
I think it'd be better if they showed us that they were serious by doing something before coming to us for a CUP.
You can't speak at this point.
And the Romanos are here, and I think
Yeah.
they would like to maybe respond to some of these because they are more intimate with the details of some of those transactions than I. But I
Well,
hope,
could I have them come up and speak before call to the public, the owners?
No, I mean, if Mr. Gilmore is the applicant,
Yes,
however, those are his people he's representing.
Yeah.
They have a right to stand up and speak also.
at the
I don't-
call to the public or,
They could speak now, they're the
With him.
applicant. They paid their money,
Yes.
they can speak, they have a right to address some of the questions that were discussed, and I think, I think it would be appropriate. I don't know if Mr.
Okay.
Gilmore's is finished, but
I can address the questions relative to the current plan
Yeah.
and moving forward. I'm not really prepared to address a lot of the history behind this.
understand?
Madam Chair,
Yes,
Mr. Gilmore, I didn't see gates for the site property. Are there gates for that too?
For the, I'm sorry, the existing business property?
The one that you want the CUP on?
No, there is no gate at this time.
So it'll be, so that south side is going to be completely open?
There is an existing wall that starts 20 feet east of the west property line and continues through most of the frontage and stops at another opening.
And that suffice, that'll be enough for them to move around that silly 20-foot strip to get back into the other property where they can do the work?
Yes, the intent is they would use that east entry. The trucks, RVs, vehicles that would come in on the east side, park, and then when the service is required, they would move back out onto 4th Avenue, go west into their current entrance, into their property.
Okay.
And obviously, that was obviously the impetus to try and work out some kind of land exchange. And ultimately, I think that's still the best solution.
Thank you.
Thank
Anyone
you.
else? Robert? Nothing? Down here, gentlemen? Nothing? Okay. Well, we'll ask the Romanos if they want to come up and speak.
Good evening. Just to
Would
clarify,
you give us your name for the record?
Sharon Romano, just to give some clarification of the time frame and what all that we have done over the years to the property. We purchased the property from Hyder in 2005, not 2002. So when the recession hit and we lost that building in 2009 on a illegal foreclosure. So we had to leave our building and go onto the other property that we had purchased, which was the east lot. So we were there from 2009 until 2013 when we won our lawsuit against the illegal foreclosure and was able to move back with the memorandum that we had signed. During that process, though, there was a lot of vandalism and a lot of illegal dumping in between the lots from the building to where we were. So during that time period, there was numerous conversations with Yanti Strepp, who was our code compliance officer at that time. Never was there any ignorance of any issues. We've always addressed them with code compliance with Yanti. And she understood all of the trauma that we were going through between not having the building and trying to maintain our trucking industry. plus the recession. So when we were able to get the property back in 2013, we agreed that we were going to clean up the building because it was just tweaked out havoc in there. So we had to clean that all out, clean the lot next door because the person who foreclosed on us, Tom Byer, he should have been responsible for that illegal dumping because that was his property at that time. But he was not. He was never found guilty, but he put complaints in about that property. And when we received it back, it fell on us. So we spent $40,000 just cleaning that one lot. So we have made all attempts to comply with the city. We cleaned the lot. We've also erected the walls out front in preparation of all of this. And I've always maintained a business license. So it's not that we ignored or tried to disrespect the city because we've always been doing what we were supposed to do. And a lot of times funds were too tight to even do it, but we spent substantial amount just in cleanup, which was not even our responsibility because Tom Byer, who had previously got it back, that all happened during his duration of ownership. But it fell on us as soon as we got the property back. So we have made numerous attempts to comply with the city and the ordinances. It wasn't until this last notice that we got is when I hired Jack to come and help us assist with this because my understanding through Yanti's emails was as long as I maintained a business license, I could park on the property. It wasn't until our last meeting that Rudy told me that, yeah, you need the business license, but you also needed this to continue. And then it made sense to me. So it wasn't that I was trying to ignore my interpretation of what Yanti was sending me was I had a legal business and I had a legal right to use that property. So this is where we are now. And that's why we hired Jack, Mr. Gilmore. So I hope I cleared some of that up for you. Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Romano, I certainly empathize with you regarding the circumstances back around the recession and all that. And I hear what you're saying, that you have done an awful lot to try and maintain the property. However, just one thing, I was looking at the timeline. The citation was issued in October of 17. Sometime in 2017, you indicated you hired an attorney, then all of a sudden that never worked out. And then in January, you met with city prosecutor. And then February, you hired Jack Gilmore. So, and here it is, August. It was August then when a CUP was submitted. There seems to be long stretches of time where nothing's done, and we're supposed to say, oh, well, that's okay because you were doing something, you know, and the memorandum of understanding goes back to 2013. And again, things were ignored. I don't know, help me understand why. I mean, I know you're saying stuff was done. I'll be honest, I drove past the property several times. If you said a lot of stuff's been done, then God, I don't know what it looked like beforehand.
It was a mess.
Because it looks like a mess now. Mm-hmm. Both properties do. Now, the subject property is a little better because it only has a couple trailers and stuff on it, and the block wall you're referring to isn't finished, so I don't know how long ago that was started. And the block wall in front of your regular business now, that's collapsing, that's leaning and breaking apart, so.
Yeah, that was hit by one of the trucks.
Okay,
But that
again,
will be repaired.
I can't speak for all the commission. We're trying to be sensitive to this, but there's a part that, for me, that feels like you just snubbed the city and said, well, we're not gonna worry about it, and we'll worry about it when things get dicey for us.
No, that's not the case. Okay, so 2013, when we received the property back, is when we erected that other wall in preparation for what the city had asked of us. So that was already erected. But then when I got the citation in 2017, going off of the pamphlet from the city saying that what is required for specific businesses, well, ours fell under no conditional use permit was needed. And I argued that for a good amount of time, and I spoke to Rudy about that. It didn't make sense why your own statement says, okay, if you're doing industrial repairs, there's no use for a CUP. But then it was explained at one of our meetings that we had, and that is when I stopped arguing the point that we are a business license, we are legally doing what we need to do, once Rudy explained that I missed a step. And then at that point is when I hired Jack. So there was no real ignorance, because there's been communications back and forth. Even prior to the initial meeting with Jack, I did speak to a lawyer. I didn't hire the lawyer because it was too expensive. So, we were supposed to have a meeting with Rudy concerning that, but then Rudy decided not to meet with us without a lawyer. And that didn't seem right to me, so I actually contacted the mayor, and the mayor sat in on the meeting so we could have a meeting. And that's when the full explanation was gained.
Okay,
Any more questions?
yeah, maybe a root question for you, Rudy. So this memorandum of understanding from 2013 clearly states on this parcel C, located at 3050 West 4th Avenue, shall remain vacant and shall not be used for vehicle parking, inventory storage, debris storage, or any other use without prior city approval. Did you get a sense back then that there was some misunderstanding, or that there was a dispute about that they really shouldn't, that they were really allowed to go ahead and use that?
It was pretty clear to me, Commissioner.
So, no, there was nothing at that point
Yeah.
that you were thinking
Right.
could have been misunderstood? Okay, all right.
Not in my opinion.
Again, I realize we can't go back in time, it's
Right.
just, those are the pieces of this that just seem difficult for me to fully accept and try and say, well, it's okay, but
No, it's
You
not
ignored the
okay.
thing.
And it was, back in 2013, there was no issue about what was required. It was when we started to use that property and I forget what it is. Remember at our meeting, you cleared what I was telling you, that I understood it as, if you got a business license, you were legal. And you said, no, there was one other step to it because it was conditional.
Correct.
So there was an understanding in our last meeting, and that's when Jack was hired, and I explained that to Jack too, why it was taking so long for me not to understand this, because I thought I was legal the whole entire time to use that property.
okay, again, I'll only go back to the memorandum of understanding stating clearly that parcel C could not be used under any circumstances, and you're saying you didn't understand that for 4 years.
Well, I could submit the emails that say you cannot use that property unless you obtain a business license. And I had a business license, and so I was able to obtain it. I was able to use the property because I had obtained a business license. I have emails that state that.
Well,
And then Rudy cleared it up on our last meeting.
again, I appreciate that. I'm only going off of the memorandum of understanding that Angelo Romano signed in June of 13, and that's all I can go under, or that's all I can use for a reference of this. So, okay, I won't
Okay.
belabor the point.
Okay, anyone else?
Oh, you're Angelo?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't like to talk. I'm illiterate. Unless he wrote me the letter, I didn't understand what I was signing for. So that's number one. I don't like to admit that, but I'm illiterate.
Okay, that,
Okay? Unless he read it to me or somebody read it to me, that's where we're at. Sharon wasn't with me that day.
Does
Just telling
anyone,
you the truth.
okay, and I appreciate that, Angelo.
That's
Maybe
fine.
that should be speaking. I don't know that that's
That's not good enough?
That's, well, I don't think that's fair to say to the commission. I didn't understand because I'm illiterate, and here we are 6 years later, looking at it, and
And to bring it into, we just started using the property just 2 years ago. We didn't start using this until in 2013. I think you guys are under the wrong misconception that we started using this property in 2013. That's not the case.
that's absolutely
what
my
you're
understanding, is that it's been,
No, we didn't start using this property until probably 2016. No, we didn't start using it when we first moved back into our original building.
If I could, Madam Chair, Commissioners,
Yes.
regarding when they owned it, when the court cases, I don't have exactly all the dates, but I do know the first week I started working here, I went out to that property along with 3 others that are still lingering here in the city. But, and I don't know at the time, but there was a previous code case. It didn't get to the citation stage, but there were piles of asphalt there. The northwest corner of the property had a chain link fence. It was full of garbage. Yanta was involved. Bob Mays was involved, our former code officer, and Romano's did clean all that up. So that never made it to the citation stage. And again, how ordinance, what is it, 1168? That really talks about if you're going to use a property, then you have to meet certain standards. But the code changed in June of 2014 to require the CUP. And maybe that's where the disconnect was, is that not until the code was changed, and I think we had a discussion earlier tonight, in a footnote in one of the tables, it really talks about how at that time the city decided they really don't want more RV storage lots unless it's a CUP. So now all these RV storage lots, a couple of them have come to you that need a CUP. So any outside storage, outside manufacturing requires a CUP. So perhaps it was the Romano's understanding that, yes, they had to comply with this ordinance, but the new twist about the CUP and whether they were using the property, I just know that they did clean it up at one particular time when I was more directly involved. And then again, there's a couple mobile homes there. There was other things going on, even on that 20-foot strip. There was a mobile home there and someone was living in it. So that we had to get resolved. So that was on the intervening property. So I think as far as moving forward, I think we can be productive by giving them the benefit of the doubt at this point, letting them do their job, their day job, and then working with the city and the neighbors and get some landscaping. And I did pull up their site plan and landscaping. So perhaps my recommendation is to move forward with a discussion of the criteria and see if it meets it, and have a public hearing and see if their neighbors have any comments. But my interaction with the Romanos has been that when asked to do something on that previous violation, they did clean it up. I don't think they caused that piles of asphalt, but they did clean it up. As far as moving other stuff onto the property, again, maybe that was a miscommunication where they didn't understand they needed a CUP under the 2014 code. So anyway, that's my 2 cents and recollection on the matter.
Okay.
Thank you. And I want to bring up one more thing about the fence. You've drove by the property, I imagine. Well, the reason why those are open, there's 2 40-foot openings. So I was hoping in the future, me and Mr. Jenkins could get together and hopefully agree on switching, get that 20-foot section moved over. That's why those gates are not there yet. Because I was hoping to combine my 2 properties together.
right.
That's
Okay.
why there's 2 40-foot openings there, if you see that. So
Right.
just to make that clear.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I did see that.
Anyone else have any questions for the Romanos?
I have one
Yes.
question for Mr. Romano.
Mr. Romano?
I just have one question. This agreement that was signed back in 2000, you signed that agreement, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, at the time, was this agreement, gone through with you and you
I don't
talked
remember.
about it? I mean, it
No,
just gave you a piece of paper, said sign
I
it?
don't remember.
Didn't go through, you didn't itemize it, say, hey, okay, number 1, this is what it
I
says
would
to
ask them
me.
to read it to me, because I don't read and I don't write. I would ask them if he would read it to me. I don't know if it was Rudy that was there that day. I don't know who I was with. I'm telling you the truth. I don't read. So I
Okay,
can't
so
tell you
but-
if it was read to me or not. I don't remember.
So, but it's safe to say that because of your condition, you would say, before I sign this, what does it say?
Yeah, most likely somebody, I'm assuming somebody did read it to me. I'm not going to say 100% because I don't remember.
Okay.
That's the only thing I can tell you.
can I just put 2 cents in there too? So when we had to move out into the vacant lot, Angelo sustained sun cancer on his ears. So at this point, back in 2013, we would have done anything to get a roof over his head, and we wanted our building back. So that probably had a lot to do with just sign, just to be honest with you.
Well, here's where I'm at, basically. You know, I'm looking at the timeline violations, and I'm seeing all these dates. Well, today is now, 2018. You know, got a year to get done, or city shut you down. I mean, basically.
We're willing to
Right,
do it.
So-
we want to get started right
We're
away
willing to
with it.
do it. I have no problem getting it done. What I really want is that 20-foot strip of land. That would move this along so much quicker if Mr. Jenkins would agree with us. That's what's holding me up. I have 2 properties that are 20 feet apart from one another.
And
That's
that-
what's holding
that
me up.
strip, that T-strip is
Yes,
holding you up
that's
on
what's
the,
holding me up, and that's why Jack got involved too, and Jack was talking to Mr. Jenkins. I don't want to take his property away from him. He put up concrete barriers up, this way we don't cross it. I don't want his property. I offered to buy it from him when we first moved in '06. He didn't want to sell it to me. He calls the police on me every time he catches me near it. That's when Jack got involved, and I said, listen, just give him 20 feet at the end.
We'll
And this
absorb
way
all the
we could
cost.
combine, and that's what's holding up, to be honest with you, that's what's holding up everything.
so if,
I want to
sorry.
combine both
Okay.
properties together. I want both properties to be conjoined.
So if this were to be approved today and that 20-foot stretch never gets resolved, I mean, is this commission led to
No.
believe that it's not going to get done?
That's why we did agree to put up a chain link fence between them. We were in the hopes to resolve an issue with them. But if we can't, we can't.
So
mean, I
like a
can't
chain
force
link
them to do it.
fence on either side of this stretch, going north and
That's
south?
what I think Jack has in the plans, yeah. Just a chain link fence from them.
And you don't cross over to property from property?
I actually walk out to the street.
Go out the street, go around 20 feet,
Yeah,
go back in the other one?
unfortunately, yeah, 'cause he will call the police on me. I don't know why there's such bad blood between us, but I won't walk on his property.
So where you stand, if this were to be approved and that, that section, that parcel is not resolved, you would throw a chain link fence running north and south, going up and down that parcel, and then basically landscape beautify the front of the other 2 parcels?
Yeah, that's where we're at.
Chairman Nestor, Commissioner Schroeder, that's what the stipulations call for. On the west property line of this CUP property, we need to install a chain link fence, and Rudy's asked for the vinyl slats. That's a stipulation with this conditional use permit. There's a fence on the west side of that 20-foot strip already. So Mr. Jenkins' property will have a fence on both sides so that their models cannot cross over that 20-foot space. So they have to go out to 4th to come back in. So there's obviously some inherent inefficiencies there. That's why we were hoping to work out an exchange. And again, I'll go back. Ultimately, I think that's going to be the best solution. We just have to understand, is there an opportunity to come to an understanding with Mr. Jenkins to see if we can shift his 20-foot drive over to the east side of the CUP property.
But
Now, if we cannot get that done in a year, then we'll be coming back for another extension of the use permit. But it doesn't mean we're not going to keep trying.
I guess
work out the
that's
exchange.
where it, well, as history with delinquency and improvements, come October 19, say, hey, guys, you know, we've been working with this other guy to get this piece of property, and it's almost there, but we're just, so that's why nothing's been done, so if you just give us another year, we're gonna be able to get this
All due respect, that's not an issue for tonight. The issue tonight is to grant us the ability to do the CUP, install the wall, install the landscape, and give us the time we hope to have.
See, I disagree. I think it is an issue because of the past violations. If past violations weren't an issue, then I would have no reason to believe that coming up next year wouldn't be an issue. See what I'm saying?
Not necessarily.
Well,
I
you're saying
think
it's
the
not an issue. That's
CUP
not the issue tonight. What could happen in a year, come back in a year, it's not the issue. The issue is what's going on now. But because of previous violations, because of history of this particular situation, I think the commission would be wise to look into the future of a year from now.
All due respect, we would love to get your support for the exchange, but your commission and the city of Apache Junction is in position to force that. Best we can do is try and develop a relationship with Mr. Jenkins and see if there is an avenue where we can all come to an understanding where that exchange could occur. And then I think we would come back in that interval and then talk to you about modifying the CUP, because if it's under one property, the CUP is no longer required.
So you're asking the commission to approve a CUP on land improvements that may or may not happen in the time of the year based on?
It will happen. That's a condition of the approval. So these improvements will occur within the 1-year period. Otherwise, we've lost the CUP, which doesn't benefit the Romanos at all. The best we can hope for is to get the CUP approved, let them complete the installation of the conditions, and then during that interval, if we can work out an exchange, great. If not, then we're going to be coming back to extend the CUP. And it might take 2 years, it might take 3 years, but at least the improvements will be done, the landscape and the fencing will be in place, and the gates will be in place, because that's a condition.
Okay, I guess I was under the impression over the conversation I just had is what's been holding this whole thing up the whole time is that strip of land.
Ultimately, and I can't disagree with you, I saw that right away. I designed industrial parks for a living. So this is an easy solution for me to recognize, and I made the recommendation to the Romanos that let's approach Mr. Jenkins and see if we can work out an exchange. I'm not going to speak for Mr. Jenkins. I can only speak for the Romanos. But when I did meet with Mr. Jenkins, he didn't close the door. I think there's some logistic issues that we need to address, because I think there is a water service that goes up his 20-foot strip into his property. If we do the exchange, then we need to restore the service. So that's some of the logistics I think that needs to happen. He's got some alignment issues on some of the stalls he has on his property, where the new 20-foot drive would approach the north side. So he's got to reorient some of his parking stalls that he leases. So there's an impact there. So we just got to work out the final impact and see if there's a way we can mitigate his impact. Because he does want to retain the ability to access 4th Avenue.
Mr. Gilmore, how many, maybe the Romanos need to answer this, but how long have you been dealing with this other gentleman to acquire that strip of property?
You know, the Romanos hired me, I'll say in early February, and I gotta admit to this commission, I'm part of the problem for the delay. We were jammed up with work, so I lost about 2 months giving these guys a fair service. So if I can take some of the blame, I will.
So, but it was not before this year?
No, it was during this year.
That's what I'm saying, it was never before. You never
No.
tried to acquire it in the past, last year?
That I don't know.
5 years ago?
That I don't know.
Well, that's,
I came on board this year in February, I believe, and then I saw that opportunity just immediately. And we started discussing that, and that's when I understood there was some history. I don't want to go into the details, but I saw the opportunity to maybe avoid the CUP entirely if we could bring these two properties together as one piece. So that was really my first goal, was to meet with Mr. Jenkins to see what are his concerns. What issues does he have, and how can we address them to make this work? And it wasn't going to happen in a time frame that was going to satisfy the dates we had coming up to address the violations. So I said, let's at least put this to the side now, address the violations, and let's keep working to see if we can work out something with Mr. Jenkins during the interval while we have this, at least the CUP in place. So I still would like to revisit that, but I don't want to make that a condition. It's not really part of why we're here tonight.
I understand, but I still want them to answer the question is, when did you first contact Mr. Jenkins to see if you could swap property?
2007, 2008, I offered him, I think it was $7,000 to buy it.
So, and since then, he's always just said not interested, or no, or what?
He said no the first time,
And then to lease the
then he-
property.
and then he said, have my attorney draw something up to his liking. I said, I'm not going to pay for my attorney. I said, you have your attorney write it up, and I'll agree to it. I'm not going to have my attorney write it up in his language, and he's going to tell him no. So I said, Mr. Jenkins, you tell him. You have your attorney
Your
write something up,
stipulations.
and then we'll sign off on it.
So for 10 years, this has
It's
been going on?
Well, it's bad blood between us. It's
Right,
not-
I understand, but it's still been 10 years, and you have no idea whether he'll ever sell you, swap with you, or anything?
No, you could ask him that, he's here. I don't know what he's thinking.
Okay,
He is not our deciding factor if we're gonna move forward.
I understand, I just
We're
to answer that
hoping-
question.
I was hoping the city, just like I said, my hopes were to obtain the property legally, to buy it from, or whatever. I like to have, look, we have a beautiful home in Awatuki, we want our shop to look just as nice. Look, we run a business out of there, we don't want it to look run down, distorted, we want it to look nice. We want, when our customers come in, they come in with beautiful vehicles. You know, that's their work, that's their living. We want our shop to look just as nice. If we could pull up pictures from 2005 to what it is today, buildings-wise, the parking lot's been paved, the building's been stuccoed. There's been quite a bit of improvements. You guys might not think so, but I do. You know, and when we got the building back in 2013, it was pretty run down. And we took out over 100 loads of asphalt. We had 15 supers. We used to be in the trucking business. We took out over 100 loads of asphalt that was dumped in that lot. It cost us $40,000. You know, we went through a hard time in our life. You know, we were at $4 million in debt, and we crawled out of that hole. And we're here today. You know, we're no longer in the trucking business. We sold that off. This is a new enterprise for me. This has been 3 years for me in heavy diesel mechanic. So I hope you guys give us a chance. Money doesn't grow on trees for me. I work very hard for it, and I work 7 days a week for it. And that's majorly another holdup too, is money. And I hope you guys understand that. And we're not trying to pull a big one over your eyes and try to get away with big scams. No, we're not like that. Look, I want my place to look just as good as next door, but I don't want to be the shiny diamond, and I got two, you know, turds on the side of me neither. You get what I'm saying? I just want you to understand that, you know, we're going to do all these improvements. Am I going to be only one? I'm willing to, because I want to keep my business. I strived for it. But now we got two businesses next door to us that have changed hands, and they're not doing anything. So why am I being picked on? Really, because nobody wants trucks in their community, right? Everything that gets here gets on trucks. So please, take that into consideration, please. I work
Madam
hard
Chair?
for a living.
Yes,
First, I want to agree with the summation from Larry about how we need to move forward with this and quit going backwards. That doesn't solve anything. Do you need this year then, do you think, in order to get this 20-foot strip of property? Is that why you think you need that whole year?
I would hope Jack could work it in a year.
I mean, the landscaping and everything could be done in 6 months, right?
Landscaping, yeah, right. I have not an issue putting that up. I just don't feel like wasting money on putting a chain link fence up, to be honest with you, when I could hopefully obtain, we're giving them another 20-foot section of land.
Gotcha.
We're kind of not giving, we don't want it. I'm giving him another 20 feet. We're just moving it over. You get where I'm coming from? We're going to join these two lots together, these 2.5 acres together. To me, it makes a lot of sense. I don't know why it doesn't to Mr. Jenkins.
If we could complete all the requirements in the first 6 months, we will. But at least we'll have a year in time versus the financing of it.
Okay.
It's just a lot of work.
Okay, thank you.
And money, so,
Okay.
you know, a year would be satisfactory.
anyone else have any questions?
Madam
Stephen?
Chair.
Yeah,
Just one last thing for me here. Did you respond to the city's deadline as far as the notice of violation last year? You had to respond by November 16th of 2017. Did you respond at all?
To the violations, yes. I
You-
believe so.
It says here, the city deadline for you to submit a complete CUP application,
yeah.
including fees and all required materials, is 5 p.m. November 16, 2017. Did you comply with that?
We did get an extension, and we did file the CUP, so Rudy informed the prosecutor, and that was stayed while we go through the CUP process. So we did satisfy the requirement.
Okay, so that was complete, because that's not in our packet.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Kreidler, yes, the notice of violation went out, I think, in October of last year. That is when the frequency of communications ramped up in a sense, and there have been several continuances. You know, court dates have been set and items have been continued as we have worked first with the Romanos, but especially more recently with Mr. Gilmore, to get a CUP in process, to give him time to work, to try and work with a neighbor on a possible land swap. So, you know, their option, of course, was to apply for a CUP, and that also stayed the court proceeding, and that's what they finally opted to do in August. And so, to answer your question, yes, they responded, and there have been some continuances on the violation issue.
Okay. Because normally we see emails going back and forth, and there's none of that in here.
There,
Yeah.
I could give you a stack of
stack?
emails this big. I tried to be concise and give you, you know, the more important
Okay.
documents.
Okay.
I
Anybody else?
have hundreds of emails.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore, I just have one question for you. Looking at the drawings, and this is current, we're not delving back in time here, but for your current proposal, now you had indicated to Commissioner McGraw that there was not going to be a gate on this parcel C, and yet here you have a 35-foot rolling gate as part of the proposal. So, which is it?
As Angelo expressed, and if you go out there today, you'll see two openings. The west 20 feet towards the west side is open, and then he's got this opening on the east side. So under the CUP, we will close off the west side. So we go solid wall all the way to the west property line where the chain link would start.
Right.
So we would just keep the one opening on the east side.
But that's the one on the east side. Maybe I misunderstood. You had indicated that that was going to be left open.
Well, open only because it's existing open. We will have to
Right, but
secure it
then
with
it
a
looks
gate.
like you're proposing a rolling gate here.
Rolling, whether it's rolling or a swing, but it will be
I don't,
secure.
but I got the impression you were saying that it was going to be left
Oh, no.
open
Sorry,
without
apologize.
anything to close it off.
No, that's the stipulation from staff that we do have to put in opaque gate.
Okay, well, that's where I was going. I thought you can't leave it
Yeah,
open
we agree.
without any, okay. Good enough.
Good enough? Anybody else? Willie? Nothing? Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'll open this up to the public, and the first request to speak is from Stan, is it Jenkins?
Must be Mr. Jenkins.
My name's Stan Jenkins, and as you're well aware, there's quite a history behind my
Would you
issues.
please state your address for the record, please, too?
P.O. Box 8582, Mesa, Arizona 85214. I've been trying to take notes, and they're a little disjointed because it's bounced around so much. But let me go through and see if I can put any kind of order to them. Well, let me start. Maybe I can find where I'm at. As far as history, I met with Mr. Gilmore on this. The history is not quite as it's been represented with Mr. Romano. There's a thing called adverse possession. Or anybody know what that is, or does anybody know what that is? Okay. Mr. Romano, when he moved in, I was glad to see him there because it was an empty building. Had issues with people getting into it. My business is on the north side. I have RV storage. They were breaking into my property, getting into RVs, stealing stuff out of RVs. When he moved in, I was excited to have somebody there to slow that down. Things were good for 2 or 3 years, and then it just got ugly because he would continue to do whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted, didn't give a care what my needs were. He had a cooler that leaked and ran over his property, his buildings right on the line. I had a big mud puddle about the size of this over there. RVs would pull in and sink into it. He says that water doesn't ruin fences. Water definitely can ruin a fence, and it was showing it. Salt buildup, all of that on there. He didn't care. Let me know he didn't care. His dog would go in there and just dig holes everywhere. Finally, I told him, you come bury the holes because I'm tired of it. He sent his guy over to bury holes, and it just got worse and worse from there. He made mention of police being called often, and they were, because he would abuse that strip in there, park on it, stage on it, store his tires on it, dump oil on it, throw oil filters on it. And I finally had enough. And I don't know the exact year, but it probably was about 2007. And I get the smile, as I usually do, that in 2007, he wanted to lease that from me for $1 a year. And I let him know that if he wanted to do that, I was amenable to leasing that to him, but he was going to have to draw the contract up. I wasn't paying $500 or $600 to have my attorney draw something up for $1 a year for his need. I had no need to have him use it. He let me know there's no way in hell he's going to have his attorney spend any money on it, so he refused to do anything. Continued to use and abuse. Over the years, the police were called because he had stuff parked on it, tires on it, oil on it, everything on it. The fence, I don't know if you can bring that picture up, but the property the building is on, he put a fence up from one corner pin to the other corner pin and left a 3-foot gate in that to get into the trailer. And he told me he was going to use my property for entrance and exit, and did that for a few years. Finally, I had the police out one day, and guys were coming in, driving across my property to get into his place. And the lady he had the trailer rented to, am I up?
No.
You have 1 minute.
1 minute.
Okay, I'm not going to cover this in 1 minute, so we'll cut to it. He would not stop them. They threatened me. He threatened me. The police told him, you can't do that. And the next day, he went out and cut a 20-foot hole in the fence that he built from corner to corner on the west property. I've asked him numerous times to quit doing it. I've sent him certified registered letters, cease and desist. They've been ignored. I told him get his attorney to draw something. It was ignored. It's just been hard to deal with. I have gas and water in that strip going in. And if I move that, I lose the gas and water because it's not my property anymore. That's an option I want for the use in that property for future use. If I move it over to the other side where he's talking about moving it, that wouldn't be anything for me.
Joel? We have the option of extending his time, do we not? Because the information he's providing is maybe quite relevant to this case?
Well, it's always relevant, but you have the option. You as the chair have the option. Don't go too long unless, you do it for other people who speak.
I understand. If you want to proceed, I think, does everyone want to hear 3 more minutes?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. The bottom line is I've got to rearrange the spaces in there. They aren't my units. I don't move somebody's unit for damage liability. So then I've got to arrange with all of them to move it, realign everything, put the new entrance in. I'm now without the water service, which I had a meter out there in the front. He destroyed, took it out, didn't care, let me know he didn't care. The gas is still in there. The service line goes back to the back corner of his building. There's power in there. What else? Anyway, for years, he has just done nothing but aggravate me, and I'm proud of it. So when Mr. Gilmore approached me on that, I told him, I can't trust or believe a word that I'm being told because he'll do as he damn well pleases, and he's told me that. He told me if I didn't want him using it, I was going to have to stand there and guard that 24 hours a day. He's going to use it whether I liked it or not. And that's when I gave up and started calling the police every time, which was, in his words, petty, but it was the only thing I had to protect me from adverse possession. Because if he continues to use that and it isn't stopped, he then can continue to use it and take it over, and I have no recourse. That's the whole problem I've had with him for years. And when I told him 7 years on adverse, he already grinned and said, already been 5. And I knew right then and there what he was heading for. As far as the agreement in 2007 that he's talking about, there never was a purchase price given to me. It was a lease, $1 a year. Refused to get his attorney involved. The issues I have now with him, which are continuing, is there's trees up against that back north corner, the northwest corner, that is tearing that fence up, my fence, the razor wire on it. I had my guy go in and trim those trees to the property line. Within that week, there's 2 posts in the block wall broken out that hold up the razor wire. Of course, we don't know who did it, but I don't know how anybody would have done that would have gone in there, because it would have gone into his property to do it. And they didn't break into my lot, but those fence posts or stand posts were broken out. So this just continues and continues and continues. So Mr. Romano can say what he says, but there's my side to it. Mr. Gilmore caught on to that. As far as them saying they can work this out, I cannot agree to work it out when nothing in the entire time he's been there has ever been met or any consideration given for the issues and problems that he's created. So I'm having a hard time being real friendly.
That's enough. That's all your time.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would ask that this not be approved until he does the improvements on it.
Okay.
Like I had to do on my property.
Thank you. I have someone named Sonia. I'll need you to give us your name and address for the record, please.
Sonia Reynolds.
You can move that down,
Is that good?
No, closer up.
up by your mouth.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm not used to speaking in front of people, so bear with me. I live directly across the street from the Romanos'
We'll need
place.
your address.
It's 3045 West 4th Avenue, directly across the street. And I've been there for 10 years now, and so I know them very well. They've been my neighbors. I haven't really had any problems with them. They're very nice people, and I understand they want to, do their business and everything, and everybody has the right to do that. I personally haven't had any problems with them, but their customers I have. Disrespectful as far as the hours that they keep. And when the truckers come in, they let their trucks run, and it's very noisy because of, it's like kind of bounces off the walls, and I live in the trailer across the street, so it's like really loud. So if they had like hours of operation, say from, I don't know, nothing after 8 o'clock at night, and then maybe don't start till 6 or 7 in the morning, that would be great. And if they do come in the middle of the night, I understand they're on truckers' hours, that they just, pull in and try to be quiet and turn their engine off and don't let it run all night long. And I don't know what else. I guess their headlights are usually shining right in my window too, so that keeps me up. And then, it makes the dogs bark and everything, and the whole neighborhood's awake. But I can vouch for them as far as in the past. I know we're trying to get past that and move forward. But they have cleaned that place up a lot. I was there, like I said, been there 10 years, and the place was way worse than it is now. And so there actually used to be a house there, and they had to tear it down and all that. So I know there's no gas anymore. And I know that because Southwest Gas came out to my property and had to mark everything today because they're doing some big project in the neighborhood. So I know there isn't any gas over there because my neighbor doesn't have gas either. So I'm just trying to think of anything else I can say. I kind of agree with the bypass that Stan owns. I don't know. I think it might solve a lot of problems, but I just don't see it happening. It doesn't seem like it's going to happen. But I also don't want the truckers to have to, I think it might be easier if they pulled in there maybe and turned around. But it's so close to my fence, I'm not sure it's possible. I think maybe they're right. If they were to have that bypass, it might be easier, but I'm really not sure. Right now, it seems like where they're turning in, it seems like it's wider because the trucks are really big. So I don't know, they need more room to turn around, and I don't know. I think it would be easier for everybody if it was kind of like over here, but I honestly don't know. And I'm sure, like, if all that gets settled, and I'd be willing to give them a chance to clean everything up. I think they're really trying, and I don't know. You can't really go forward if you're still going backwards, in my opinion. And I've gone over a lot of stuff in my life, so if I keep looking to the past, I'm never gonna get ahead. And so I'm on both sides, but I don't know. I just assume this all be over with and everybody get on with their lives, actually, because we just can't hate each other with the world right now. Just no more fighting. I don't know. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. We have Hunter Wigman.
Hey, it's Joseph Wigman. Go by my middle name, Hunter. I'm at 423 South Cedar Drive. I am the house right here, straight across the street from her, actually. I've only lived here. I've owned the property for 2 years now. For the most part, everything's been, not too bad. My biggest concern with the property is that because Cedar Drive lines up with the east entrance to this lot, the trucks tend to pull into or onto Cedar Drive to make a swing to be able to back up onto the property, or if they need to back out of the property, it's easier for them to just keep backing straight rather than backing and turning. The problem with that is, obviously it's right in front of my property. Also, I believe it's dirt on that property, so if it ever gets rainy or muddy, the mud tracks up and down the street there right in front of the house. So I don't know if they're even supposed to be on there. Maybe we can just reiterate with them not to go onto Cedar Drive and strictly say on 4th Avenue. Besides that, the other thing would be, as Sonia said, maybe some sort of hours of operation. The trucks do get noisy. I don't know if like the sound ordinance is 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. I'm not sure if that's it or what, but something a little sooner would be nice, because nobody wants to hear a truck idling at 10, 11 o'clock at night, right? But, I read the reviews online for his business. They're all good reviews. I'm sure he does good work out of there. I'm all about small business. It looks like he's got a little game plan to get some landscape done and some screening done, maybe fix the walls that are broken down. Besides that, my main concern is probably hours of operation and just driving down Cedar. I think they could be able to, it looks like they can do everything from 4th Ave. They should be able to anyways. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak?
Can I say one more thing?
Can she speak again?
Well, you.
She's had her time.
Well, Madam Chair, I think you allowed the other gentleman more time, so you can
Okay.
add her another few minutes if that's what you want.
Yes, you can.
I just wanted to kind of agree with what he was saying, because, like I said, I have that whole corner right there, so I know that the customers that he has over there are the ones that we're having a problem with. It's not him really. He doesn't drive on the street, but I was told years and years ago, I don't know if it was Rudy or whoever, but I was told that the street on the side streets, they weren't allowed because of the weight of the vehicle, and it tears the road up, and they just basically got paved. So it can't handle all that weight with all the trucks going up and down there. But 4th Avenue was built to be more sturdy. So that's why they're supposed to come in off Meridian, because Meridian is a strong street, and then, you know what I'm saying? And so, but like I said, I know some of those trucks are so big, they have to kind of turn in on Cedar in front of our house and then start backing up. And I have had a couple issues, but like I said, not with him, but a couple of his customers have hit my fence and they fixed it right away. But that's always what I'm afraid of, is having any kind of damage or anything done, because it's just so close. So I don't know. I kind of, like I said, I kind of agree with the bypass. If they were able to go in that way, they wouldn't really be near my fence at all, because they would have to go into the lot, right? And then turn their rigs around inside his property and not anywhere near ours, if you can understand that. So, and then they're not dragging all the dirt out and making the street all dirty and all that. So that's, yeah.
Thank you for that information. I have a question for Rudy on that. Is there, or maybe Joel, what is there that the city would have? These are other people, that's not them
Well, if they were-
exactly, it's the people driving the vehicles.
Madam
that
Chair,
are-
if I may, before you ask a question, I don't know if there's anybody else who wants to speak.
Okay,
You may want to close the public hearing, and then you may want to start
Okay.
asking such questions.
okay. Anyone else would like to speak? Did you have a question for me? No, we can't ask questions. Please?
Madam Chair, thank you. I'll make this quick. I think we all recognize that 4th Avenue we're in a transition area. You know, the general plan calls for some higher-end commercials on the north side of 4th. It happens to have some industrial zoning. South is residential. That came from the county. I've had to deal with the situation in other communities, and it can be a challenge. Hopefully, City of Apache Junction will be in a position where they can take on a capital improvement project and plan for some additional pavement. Most subdivisions that I work on always have, and this is a requirement in, I'll say, all the cities I work with, the south side of 4th Avenue, those lots face onto the north-south street. So the lots that happen to be on 4th Avenue, those are side yards. And historically, all the cities that I work in require a screen wall. So none of those have screen walls. They're chain link or have no fence at all. The most effective way to deal with noise is a block wall. Landscaping won't do it, so it's a block wall. So maybe that can be part of the ultimate solution for the improvement of 4th Avenue, additional pavement as a collector, and then even some walls on the south side. Regarding the access into the property, I think this will take a wider gate to allow wider turning movements, and I think we won't have the problems of people backing out. The property will be dust-proofed, so hopefully we can get past this issue of any mud coming onto 4th Avenue, because that's a condition of the approval. And in spite of what we've heard tonight, I still want to pursue this potential for an exchange. The challenges are there, but ultimately I think it's going to be the best solution if we can work it out. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to this commission? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing and open it up for discussion. Who wants to start?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
It seems to me that property is going to need a couple of entrances and exits in order to avoid a lot of these neighborhood concerns. There's one 35-foot gate. How wide is that property?
I don't remember.
132.
130?
132.
113. Is that what
Site
you?
plan says 132, Madam Chair.
132.
So there's enough room there for two gates. Now, I'm not taking into consideration that silly 20-foot strip, but there's enough room there for 2 gates for them to come in and out without backing into Cedar. It would probably, they still have the issue with the screen wall. So, I don't know, my suggestion would be that that one gate is just not enough unless they've got enough room to turn around in that lot, which if it's full of equipment ready to be worked on, there's probably not gonna be any room in there to turn around. So we need to probably look at asking if that's something that would help alleviate some of the neighborhood issues. That's all I have.
Okay. Stephen, do you have anything?
Well, I'm still mulling over and the memorandum of understanding. To me, it's very clear that that lot was not to be used without prior city approval. That took place in 2013. Code changed in 2014. It's immaterial. It's still not to be used without city approval, yet it was, and that's why the violation in 2017 was done. So, and then the acknowledgement of failing to comply with the city requirements. It was signed. He should have understood whether he did or not. I don't know, but he signed acknowledging the fact that he understood. So I don't see any reason to approve it based on that alone. And then the timeline, it has been explained a little bit, but it still seems a year from the time of notification of the violation. It still seems a little long before a CUP is applied for. So all of that combined, plus the past history involved, I have difficulty approving something like this without some improvements showing good faith that they are in fact serious. I mean, they can talk all they want to, but until there's some action put forth, I don't see any reason to approve it at this point.
Okay. Robert? This direction? Willie? No question?
I
No
would
comment?
have to agree that we need more actions to show that they really are serious. I understand what has been said, but at this particular juncture, there have been a lot of time that has transpired and nothing has happened.
Michael? Okay, Peter?
Yeah, a couple things, and I will go through the findings before we go further, but I would say too, I do feel there has to be, again, I'm all for trying to encourage and allow small business owners to be able to operate and function. So I don't want to make this onerous, but I believe we, as a commission, we are also responsible to assure that we serve the public and that we assure that we do our part to try and make certain that a conditional use permit is issued and is done so properly. So, and I think that'll be addressed later.
Okay.
Did you want to?
Yeah, I had a question before for Joel. I hope Joel can figure out what I was gonna ask, because I can't remember. I forgot it.
I'm sorry, I was focused on procedure, so I don't know where you're going.
What was my question?
I'm
It
I
had
think
something.
you're asking for possible alternatives, I think. I think you may have been going that way, but I wasn't sure.
I can't remember.
If I may just add a statement, I know my office has been involved with the Romanos and for a long time, and I have to say, ENCO compliance, development services, it goes back years. So, when conditional use permits are used to try to cure some issues that arise, and that's been done in a lot of cases, and this will take care of at least some problems for at least a year. some of the code issues. And so we hopefully won't be having any code violations of the same nature that we had. If you take a look at your conditions, or the recommended conditions, I should say. Number 12, if there's going to be automatic expiration in 12 months if nothing's done, basically. He'll be considered void. If that one doesn't apply, then you go to the other one, number 13. This one gives you discretion. This one basically says you have the right to reconsider his conditions for non-compliance with any conditions prescribed as part of the CUP approval. So you don't really lose much by agreeing to this CUP, because you could always come back and you could always bring it back for revocation if you have those types of strong feelings. Some of the conditions are a little long, and it's in other cases, I think we don't give them that much time, but that's up to you. Like the landscaping and screening, if you want to get something out of this up front, that's the 6-month rule. And you can bring them back up here and ask them if that's going to cause a financial problem for them.
Does it have to be 6 months?
No, you can pick how much time. It
Okay.
could be 6, it could be 7, it could be, the problem is if they don't do it within the year, then it just becomes void. And that's the only problem that I would see with some of those conditions with that. However, if there's other violations, the Development Services Director can bring it back for consideration of revocation also. So I know, and there have been a lot of problems between the two. There is some bad blood. It seems to me it could be mediated between the two parties. I mean, my office is willing to do that or try to do that. I don't know if that would be, I mean, it wouldn't be we wouldn't charge a fee to do it. However, and I've done that in other cases with other property owners. And sometimes it works, sometimes it fails miserably because the parties will never agree. Perhaps that could be done. I mean, perhaps that roadway, the strip, there could remain utility easements, so those utilities cannot be pulled out of there. I don't know. You'd have to meet with the parties and discuss it. And I don't know if they're willing to do that, but that is another option during the next year if you do approve this.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Rudy, is any of that in that strip active? The gas, water, power?
I don't know, Commissioner, I don't know. They could be, I mean, the easements are there. If new water lines need to be installed, they could be installed.
Well, I heard meter was gone, or so I'm assuming that there's no water flowing, but.
I heard gas and water, one of those might be active, I don't know,
I'm just, what would stop movement on that property? Is it an active utilities running through there or not? But you don't know.
Well, ultimately, if they agree to a land swap, the utility easement would also transfer to the east side of the property. I think that would, Mr. Jenkins would want that to be part of the deal. Now, who pays for the moving of those lines, that's, of course, an issue of negotiation.
I think what Joel is suggesting, though, is that the utilities could stay, Mr. Jenkins could sell the land, and he would retain a perpetual easement for utilities, so the utilities would not have to move, whether they're functional or not. So yes, you could swap land, or you could just buy the land, but he could retain an easement for future utilities, for future development.
We don't know
And
what
then-
kind of easement, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, then you can never build a building on it, but vehicles could go back and forth.
And we don't know what kind of easement it is. I haven't seen an easement document. I have not researched that. That takes time and effort to do, and I don't know if they've tried that privately between the two of them. It doesn't sound like they have. And I don't know if it's a type of easement that can be just voided if you sell the property. Probably not. I don't know if it's a private easement. I don't know if it's a public utility easement for forever. It might be in perpetuity. I don't know.
Yeah.
So those issues are not really part of this CUP, but they come into it if there's going to be a negotiation over the next year. I mean, that sounds like a long time, a year. If the negotiations are going to start, they should start fairly soon.
Okay. Anyone else? Any comments? Okay, I'll have my 2 cents worth. I've been reading this thing all week long, several times. And I've heard a lot of things tonight that make me change a little bit of what I was thinking about. And I'm not going to try to go back too much in the past, because as we said, who cares what happened in the past? Let's move forward. But I do have the concern that several of you have stated about, there was an agreement signed in 2013. Whether Mr. Romano, Mr. Romano understood what he was signing, is, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I still feel his wife had to have read it and had to have seen that she knew she couldn't park on the east property prior without city approval, whether she had a city operating license or not. They could not expand the business and don't use the other lots and without city compliance with landscaping and screening. Nothing was ever done. This has been going on for 5 years, or at least 4 years since rules changed. It seems like nothing happened until they were going to possibly be sued last October. I'm inclined to say that I don't want to see, I'm pro-business, so I don't have a problem with helping a business person, but I don't see giving somebody a year. I'm sorry. You've had too many times that you've had too many months and years to do things, and I would like to say that I think we should ask that, I'd like to see this CUP, if approved, come back to us in 90 days to see at least the landscaping and the screening started within 90 days. And if nothing's happened in 90 days, then we'll rescind the CUP. We got to see something done, and if things don't start happening, then there's no sense carrying this out any further, because we can't wait for the owner to sell or swap the property, because it sounded to me, we couldn't ask him, but it doesn't sound to me like he's interested in selling. Now, I may be wrong on that, but I have to go on the assumption that if he hasn't sold in 10 years, he may never sell. So therefore, the fencing, the screening, the landscaping, all of that stuff needs to start now. So that's my 2 cents worth. Okay?
May I
So, you want to go over?
review findings?
Yes.
Okay, so I'd like to review findings relative to the conditional use permit. So we'll go through the seven conditions or findings. So finding number 1 is the adequacy of roadways, off-street parking, public facilities, and services to accommodate the proposed use. Certainly, I think, as has been presented from neighbors, is there is an issue relative to these larger vehicles that cannot, they can't, be accommodated with the current setup of the business, and they have to back up, or apparently maybe even use Cedar Avenue, which I think probably makes sense. It's not supposed to occur. So that would have to be an issue that the applicant would, from my perspective, would have to address that and assure that that did not happen. Any other comments? Any other?
I think we need to say in there for the adequacy of the roadways that there obviously cannot be any off-street parking at all. And I'm not sure where they were talking about trucks pulling up at night with their lights and trucks running. Was that off-site or on the property? But they have
Madam
to,
Chair,
yes.
it sounded like that was on property.
Well, I wasn't
Yeah.
100% sure, but no off-street parking at all. And they need to make their property so that trucks can pull in and turn around without backing up on Cedar.
If I may, I'm going to have to interrupt,
Okay,
and I'm sorry, but these are supposed to be discussions on findings.
findings.
So if you're coming up with new conditions, then
Okay.
you probably should state that I want that as a new condition. or, but what the findings are supposed to be, and you're not in a motion right now, so you can talk about anything you want, but I suggest
Okay,
that you do it as if you're making the findings, and if you can't, it sounds like Mr. Heck was going one way first, and now it sounds like, well, no, it's okay if you address the issues. Well, that's not really a finding.
okay.
That's not a finding. The finding is, based on the evidence you heard tonight, do these conditional use permit conditions exist so that you can make findings? Does the evidence equal positive or negative findings? That's the whole point of going through these.
So you're saying is that we could say that adequacy of roadways, off-street parking, public facilities are not
adequate.
adequate.
If that's your finding, correct.
Okay,
Madam Chair.
yes,
You could state that it's inadequate because South Cedar
right.
is not commercially zoned, or the vehicles, the roadway itself cannot handle commercial vehicles.
And then when we get to the conditions, we can add them into the conditions.
That's correct.
Yes.
Well,
Okay.
but you have to have findings that support the
Right.
conditions. So if that is one of your findings, then that's not met. So you have to come up with the findings. That's the whole point of
Madam Chair.
having a CUP.
And the
Okay.
finding in this case would be that South Cedar is not a commercial graded roadway.
Robert?
You know, just stick with the conditions as written and throw in your 90-day stipulation. I mean, there are already stipulations in the current conditions that say, I mean, plainly that if these things aren't met, it'll be revoked.
Well,
So-
we still have to make the findings, though.
Well, I mean, if we just change the timeline in the conditions and the findings of that. I mean, as far as the roads go, the Cedar Road, that's unfortunate. But who's gonna be around at midnight, you know, and saying, oh, well, you can't go down that street?
Yeah.
You know, that's something that could never, I don't believe, can even be enforced. So just to, you know, make it simpler, just
Okay.
the main thing you're looking for is we want to see improvement before
Right.
this starts to happen, right?
Yes,
So if we just throw in there the 90-day condition, just to start seeing commitment and improvement, and then let the rest of the conditions be as they may, and we'll see what happens in a year.
But I think we still have to
make the findings.
examine, consider
Yes.
all the findings.
You do have to have findings that support
Or-
whether
If
What are we
we
doing?
change anything, correct?
you
We
could
need
change
findings.
something. However, I'm saying in order to have findings, or in order to have your conditions, say you're in favor of this motion to approve. Say you want to do that. Then your findings would probably be in the positive. Whereas if you don't want to do it, then no, I want to recommend a negative vote on this, and that's because of the following findings. And then you go through them, because the roadways aren't adequate. The negative impacts exist of these noise, lighting, vibrations. That's how you're supposed to do a CUP. So I suggest someone make a motion, and then you make the motion on the findings and then on the conditions.
So to help Peter, we want
So
to,
let me, you know,
if we want to make a positive,
Right, if it's a
Come to-
negative motion, then you don't need conditions. If it's just a motion to deny, you
you're
go-
saying if it's positive,
we don't,
need
if-
conditions?
if the motion is to deny,
Oh, that's a negative, okay.
then you still go through the findings, and then you're not going to have any conditions.
Right,
If the
correct.
motion is to approve,
You got to
you go through the findings, and they need to be in the positive, and some of these some of them might not even apply. Like in some other cases we had, some
Right.
don't even apply.
right.
Right,
But some of them do. And then if they're in the positive, then you make the conditions, and of course, you can change the recommended conditions that staff has provided already.
So, but could you have a negative finding that you address through a condition?
No, if you're gonna, you have to have supportive findings in order to vote yes on this motion. And once again, you can change the conditions.
Okay, so the finding is the adequacy of roadways, off-street parking, public facilities and services to accommodate the proposed use.
Correct.
That
Does that
doesn't-
even apply,
That
number
doesn't
one?
get changed.
Well, does that even apply in this
Is it
case?
appropriate or not? 'Cause
Right,
Is
is
it
it appropriate to
appropriate?
even
Does it
analyze?
apply?
And if
Yes
it
or no?
isn't, then move on to the next
So
one.
we don't have to change anything, we just need to say if that is appropriate.
So I'm asking the question, is the adequacy of roadways, off-street parking, and public services, public facilities and services not pertinent to this?
It is pertinent,
Yeah, that's why,
so yes,
okay, so it is.
yes. So the
then-
answer is, for the finding is yes, it's,
With the changes that they make, I think it will be appropriate.
Well, we're not talking about changes, let's
Well-
just agree to this finding or not.
yeah,
if
just
you're going
agree.
to- Right, and if you're gonna add a condition, is note it somewhere that you wanna add in that
We
condition.
can change it in the conditions.
Okay,
So, yeah, I would agree to this finding.
okay, so we're gonna say that
It applies.
there's adequate roadways and, okay. Finding B, negative impacts arising from emission of odor, dust, gas, noise, lighting, vibration, smoke, heat, or glare.
So we would
That
find there's no
applies.
negative impacts, right? You want to approve this?
I would agree to this finding.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay. Contribution of the deterioration of the neighborhood or the negative impact on neighborhood property values.
yes,
I believe there is no negative, it doesn't contribute negatively, yes?
well, it does as far as possible dust and noise and lighting, lights, truck
Wait a minute, we
lights.
already said that was adequate, that there was no,
Read the whole finding,
just
and
below.
then agree or disagree to that. And I agree with it.
Well, well, let me go back to B then, since we're not sure. Negative impacts arising from the emission of odor, dust, gas, noise, lighting, vibration, smoke, heat, or glare. The feeling was that that there is no negative impact from those events.
I agree.
Is there any disagreement with that?
Well, staff also goes on and puts here, they have received noise and vibration complaints about the site. They need buffering and landscaping should mitigate some of these issues.
But we have to make it a
Madam
positive
Chair.
finding so that we
Yes.
can do
If the screening ordinance is in fact followed,
Then that should,
then that will take care of that issue.
Yeah.
right,
And that's already been,
that's in the
that's already in
agreement,
there.
or the
So
conditions.
It's not a factor.
It's not a factor.
or it shouldn't be. Right, okay. So moving on to C. Contribution to the deterioration of the neighborhood or the negative impact on neighborhood property values. Again, I don't see that this would have any, I don't believe this would have any, would contribute to that. Anybody disagree?
Yeah, I agree. It's not going to depreciate the neighborhood values.
I'll agree with that, contribution. Contribution to the deterioration.
About compatibility with surrounding uses and structures.
I think it's compatible.
I would
It's
almost say it
compatible.
doesn't apply really, because it's,
Well-
it's in a commercial,
It's
Area.
in both.
yeah. So we'll say compatible. Conformance with the general plan and city policies,
Yes,
COP will be.
conforms. Screening and buffering of uses,
Yes,
that
that's
is,
all right.
yes, that will,
it applies.
proper screening. And the unique nature of the property and/or use and/or development's physical characteristics.
Applies here.
I think we're,
Unique.
I don't think there's anything, but these properties themselves, there's nothing unique about it, so
No,
I would
nothing.
say it's not, doesn't apply.
Property is
Well,
shrouded by unique physical characteristic.
Doesn't apply.
Doesn't apply.
but it doesn't apply as far as us making any conditions for it.
Once again, these are evaluation criteria under section 1-16-12-D-3 of the city code. So these are evaluation criteria you're supposed to use.
Yeah.
Okay?
If we get down to our conditions and then find out, we can go back, jump back to the findings and change them?
If you feel that is necessary, yes.
Do it backwards? Okay.
And Madam Chair, if I may, you may want to now discuss the conditions if this is something that
Yeah, that's a
you want
good
to
idea.
approve or not.
Let's go over the conditions, and that way we can find out if we need to change any of our findings.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I did like your idea about the 90 days. I agree with that, making that one of the conditions.
okay. Well, we can add that one on. Let's start with number 1, though. Do we want to say that within 6 months of this CUP approval, that they have to have a properly constructed and located decorative 6-foot tall masonry wall along the West 4th Avenue property frontage, and a 6-foot tall chain link fence with desert tone vinyl or wooden slats. And both of those in 6 months? Everybody agree with that?
I agree with that.
Okay. So, we agree with number 1, and if anybody sees that that applies to the findings. Okay, number 2, the wall in condition 1 shall reserve a proper gateway width to allow for adequate large vehicle turning movements into the property. We've discussed that quite a bit. Mac, that was
Yeah.
one of your issues.
Madam Chair, I'm just trying to alleviate the problems they're gonna have with the neighbors and the backing up and the headlights. Now, this may, I'm not an engineer for the city or for the Romanos, but it seems to me if they had an easy ingress and egress, that would alleviate some of the issues, because if they're gonna fill up that property with equipment, I'm not sure how they're gonna turn around in there.
I have a question then for Rudy. Rudy, when these conditions were drawn up, does the city actually feel that that this wall and the openings and the gateway and everything is adequate to do the turnaround and everything?
Madam Chair, Commissioner McGraw, the reason we worded the condition to include city engineer review and planning division review is if this CUP is approved, we want to get Emil's input on his recommendation for a proper commercial driveway. 35, they're proposing 35 feet, 35 feet may be fine, Emil may ask for 40. If we have the folks install 2 driveways, then it's gonna, I don't know that that's really gonna alleviate any issues.
Well, the backing up is the only thing I was,
Right.
the neighbors were concerned about, Rudy, when they were backing up on the Cedar.
Yeah.
If they had a way to get around without backing up, is the only reason I brought that up.
Well, I mean, but what does that mean, though? Does that mean 2 35-foot wide driveways or 2 40-foot wide driveways?
Not the engineers.
Yeah, that's why maybe we should leave that to the city engineer's discretion.
So what should we do with this condition at this point?
Unless you really want to move it to require 2 driveways, Madam Chair, I leave it as is, but make it subject to city engineer review, which is what we're suggesting.
To stop the backing up onto Cedar.
Yes, we can have.
So that verbiage can be put in there.
But we've said, well,
Yes, to mitigate the backing up onto Cedar or Fourth
Rudy?
Avenue, yes.
So how do you what should we add into this? Said masonry wall in condition 1 shall reserve a proper gateway with, based on city engineer determination?
Sure.
Just as it's written.
yeah,
Right,
I'm saying, but do we want to say to mitigate use of any roads other than 4th Ave?
Okay,
Madam Chair?
to mitigate
Yes.
use of roads other than Fourth
Other than
Avenue.
4th Ave.
Just that, I mean, if it were turned into a 40-foot wide driveway and it was transposed to the west side of the property instead of the east side of the property, there is no road
back up.
to back up into. And that would take care of the 2 roads that they were using to back up into. And I'm assuming these are trucks going in for repair, correct? I mean, so they're not, these semis do not have their trailers hooked to them, right? I mean,
I don't know, I'm not a trucker, so.
well, I don't see why they would have a 53-foot trailer hooked to you going to get your rig fixed.
Well, if you don't,
And it's
then there'd be no
132
problem.
feet wide, I mean,
There'd be
It's
no
just the
problem
cab,
with just
is
the
what you're
tractor.
saying.
that's what I would think that's what's going in there, just the cab, right?
There are trailers on the property. I was by there today.
Right.
So, I
there
mean,
were,
Yeah,
it's-
there's some
Whether,
parked
whether they're
there.
dropping them
Yeah.
there or not,
No.
there's still gonna have to be access to maneuver a semi with a trailer around.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, Madam Chair, we don't know that specifically
Right.
for all of the things going in and out. So we can't specifically
We
say
can't
that.
address that, because we don't know.
So let's let the planning division, the city engineer review that concern.
So how do you want to add into there that this,
No, just leave it the
no,
way it is.
leave it for the way it is for right now?
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
So am I leaving out the mitigate use of any others other than fourth? Are we leaving that out?
yeah.
Rudy's shaking his head. Rudy says, I'm confused.
I mean, we can, if you want to, at the end of the paragraph, we can add, subject to planning division, city engineer review and approval to mitigate use of roads other
I
than
think we
Fourth
should just
Avenue.
have that, at least to show, it indicates that we're acknowledging that there is use
Right.
of
Right.
other roads. Okay.
Okay, the third one, the slatted chain link fence in number 1 shall not allow or provide any east-west access gates or movement across the 20-foot strip of land owned by the owner. That's true,
That's correct.
just the way it is.
Just the way it is.
Number 4, within 1 year, do we want to go with 1 year of CUP approval? Outside of said masonry fence facing Fourth Avenue, the property owner shall install landscaping? No, that's where I said they need to, I want to see something in 90 days.
Well, here, I'm wondering if it, because we're talking about landscaping and irrigation, we're not talking about building a masonry wall.
Right.
If we say 90 days, then can we also say this condition will be fulfilled prior to the use of the subject property?
That's what I really want to see.
Can we do that? Can we say it has to be?
Yeah,
That way, it was the whole issue of, we need to see some action before we get before the CUP is,
These are your conditions.
okay.
you know, except that, I'm not saying they have to have the 36-inch box trees put in, but I want to see, or do you want to see 36-inch box trees?
I think it should, in 90 days, that should.
So within 90 days of CUP for number 4? And everything else? Okay. That includes backflow preventers? I don't know what that is. And
One
meters.
suggestion, if I could, Madam Chair, would be that they would submit a landscape plan within 90 days and
Okay,
install it within 6 months. So they would, because this is a conceptual landscape plan, so they have to have however they're going to irrigate it, because it takes irrigation. And they would have to submit a landscape plan within 90
Wait,
days and install it within 6 months.
Yeah, it's not just plant
That's
the
reasonable.
ground and walk away.
yeah,
A lot of things.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's reasonable,
Well,
Madam Chair.
And
okay,
why hasn't that been done? Why?
well,
Well, I mean, that's
let's be
here we
positive.
are, okay, all right.
Let's give
All right.
them 90 days to submit their plans to the city. And then all the landscaping has to be done within 6 months.
6 months.
Don't we already have the preliminary landscape plan in our hands?
It's a conceptual
It's
landscape plan,
concept,
so
it's
it's not
not the preliminary.
the final landscape plan, because we don't know where
That's
the,
preliminary.
But-
I meant the final, I'm sorry.
the final.
It
So
hasn't been
plus
approved, right?
Plus the gate might now be 40 feet instead of 35 feet, so I think they have to account for that in a landscape plan.
And it could be on the west side instead of the east side.
And the gate could be moved to the west side instead of the east side, so I think once that's sorted out, then they could finalize a landscape plan. And they should be able to do that in 90 days to get the city engineer's review, approval of a driveway, and
Whatever.
so forth.
Got that?
Think so.
Number 5, it says within 1 year, the site shall be treated for dust control. It doesn't need to take a year for dust
Too long,
control.
Madam Chair.
What do you think's adequate? What would be adequate?
We're doing 6 months for everything, might as well give them
6 months, okay.
6 months.
Number 6, a properly designed wall, opaque, non-see-through gate shall be installed.
Again, I think 6 months is more than adequate for
Adequate.
that,
Yeah,
unless anybody disagrees.
no, I don't know that it should be 6 months for a foot gate. Number 7, the business owners, you keep moving on me. Business owners shall ensure and take reasonable precautions that any outside activities are conducted in such a manner that minimize disturbance of neighboring residential properties. That's the lights and the backing up on the side street and everything else. Causing noise, vibration, bright lights, or other. So,
Madam Chair,
yes,
that covers the trucks running all night on their, on diesel,
yeah.
so.
Yeah, I'm okay with,
What about the hours from 10 up till 10 PM at night?
Yeah.
Is that standard, kind of? I think it's usually
that
10 to
would be-
6.
Yep.
There shall be no outside or on-street parking. That's, yep.
mhm.
Number 9.
Yeah, that looks
The
okay.
property owner shall not, yeah, number 9's just standard.
Yep, all right.
Number 10, potential increases in the opinion
That's-
shall be defined as,
That's pretty typical, I
that's
think.
standard.
Yeah,
Number 11, properly built, yeah, number 11 standard.
yep.
Now, you had an issue with 12 or 13, which way to?
No.
Operating a business according with this.
Before we get to that number 12, I would like to recommend adding one condition, which would read, or I submit would read, the applicant will meet with the city attorney to seek a solution to the 20-foot parcel that divides the properties owned by the applicant. The meeting will occur within 12 months.
Well, you can't
We
force.
can't order somebody to
Can't do that.
Yeah, we
negotiate,
said, didn't
can we?
Well, you start out by saying applicant will meet with the city attorney.
Yeah, I mean,
That could be done within, well, I
Within a
don't know their
month,
timeline,
okay.
but it shouldn't take a year to do that.
okay.
But you can't force Mr. Jenkins to sell the property or enter into
I'm
an
not,
agreement.
all I'm
And-
saying is to seek a solution to it, not
Right.
saying to come up with a solution.
Right, and
that
I could
doesn't-
offer up mediation, see if they'd want to meet, and if they don't want to meet, he's met that item.
That's all I'm
Okay.
looking for.
Okay, then the city attorney will approach both parties to see if they want to mediate within a certain period of time, not the other way around.
Right, and I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, do it that
So-
way.
so
The
say with
city
the-
attorney.
Oh.
Well, the city
The city
attorney's
attorney
office,
will-
the city attorney or the
office
city attorney's office
will meet-
will be in contact with both parties
That's fine. I
to
don't mean,
mediate.
It doesn't,
I don't mean being bound by one of your conditions. I will happily do that. I'll happily do that.
but we can't leave it that the applicant will meet with the city attorney.
Well, you can, I think you should have that in there, and then I will meet with them, and then I
The
will,
onus should be on the
and I will
applicant.
attempt communication with both, and if it fails, it fails.
Okay, and I'll say that can be done within 60 days?
I could do that within 60 days, yes.
City attorney will contact both parties within 60 days.
I'm just gonna say the meeting will occur within 60 days.
Okay.
Or not.
Or not?
Cool.
Well, if you make
That's why I
it,
say contact them.
Madam Chair, if you could make it 90 days, because we're approaching the Christmas holidays,
All right.
and it's getting a
Okay.
little tight on time now, so.
So you want 90 days to contact both parties to,
And then have the meeting,
Have a meeting.
and have a
if,
meeting?
if they want to meet.
Okay, right,
Okay.
right. Okay, so that's.
What
okay,
about
12,
the
so-
other,
So then, what comes 13 and 14?
yeah? No, move
Well,
your,
I made 12 that one, and then
okay.
we would move that.
Sorry, Madam Chair, could we have Peter reread that, because there was a lot
Oh.
going
Oh,
on.
sorry. Okay, so condition number 12,
New condition.
New condition number 12.
Or just make it 14 to make it easy.
Oh, okay, do it at the very, okay, all
Okay,
right,
do it
then,
at the end.
never mind,
So
let's
number
make it.
12 as it is right now? Shall
Yeah,
improve.
12 and 13, okay.
Is there any time frame on here? And shall approve and begin finish with this.
Just within 12 months.
Do we want it within 6 months or 12 months? Or else it shall be. Nothing
I mean,
shall
everything else has
improve
been,
and
everything
begin
else has been 6
operating.
months, so,
Well, we've got that strip of land, so let's
Well,
keep that.
yeah,
in
this is,
consideration.
this one's a little different than that, doing the other things.
Yeah.
So leave it 12 months.
okay.
Okay, number 13? So,
That's only non-compliant. so,
revocation,
okay.
the planning and zoning shall reserve the right to consider the public hearing, blah, blah, that's standard.
Yeah.
So all
All
we
right,
got is
so
the
then-
number 14.
So number 14, Rudy, the applicant will meet with the city attorney to seek a solution to the 20-foot parcel that divides the properties owned by the applicant. The meeting will occur within 90 days.
The 20-foot property isn't owned by the applicant.
No, I'm saying that divides the properties owned by the
Oh.
applicant.
You're
That's,
correct.
yeah, does that make sense that does that, Rudy, make sense what I'm saying?
Chairman Heck?
Yes,
The city attorney will attempt to contact both parties to mitigate to mediate the 20-foot wide strip. The city attorney will do.
No, I thought we were saying that's
You
up to
could have-
the applicant.
No, he was okay with being put under a condition.
Oh, I
And
didn't.
you could
oh,
have
I-
both if you want. That could be
Okay.
one paragraph.
but he will contact them and they will work with him.
Yes, mutual cooperation.
I got a question, Joel.
Speak.
If you do hold this mediations and it's a success, then they don't need a CUP for this, correct?
Oh, no, they're still under the CUP.
But if that
Absolutely.
property got combined, then would they need the CUP?
Well, then
for parking?
if it's successful, then I suppose both parties or one party, well, the Romanos could come back and say, we'd like to revise our CUP or basically have it extinguished, because then they won't need it. But they might need it.
The outdoor.
You don't know.
storage.
I'm sorry?
The outdoor storage under the B5 zoning still requires it.
Yeah, I think you'd be under it.
But this is for parking, correct?
Doesn't matter, it says storage,
Still.
Joel.
It's for all issues, I think. It's all,
parking, storage, inventory.
it's for all uses.
Automotive repair.
Yeah,
So regardless whether this property is married or not, it needs a CUP to do what they want to do on it.
Correct.
so let Rudy know what you're going to say for number 14. Unless you want to say number 1 through 13 make any changes and then read number 14 when you get it.
No, I got a bazillion changes to the
Well,
other
okay.
ones. Yeah, no, I
Just
don't-
tell Rudy when you get to
Okay.
number 14.
well, let me just,
Okay,
let me just read 14. I'm changing that again.
Here's what I,
Good. Please, somebody give me something.
applicant will meet with city attorney to seek solution to 20-foot parcel that divides properties within 90 days. City attorney will contact both parties and attempt mediation if they want to meet.
Perfect.
Can we have that?
That's good
Okay.
enough.
Can you give that to Peter?
So can I just say, when I come to 14, just say per Rudy?
Or Rudy?
I'm gonna say, yeah, per Rudy. Okay.
Per Rudy.
Okay.
Does anybody else have anything else? Does that change any of the findings of fact?
No.
No, I think we've covered the finding.
I mean, we didn't change anything here that changed what we said about the findings that I can think of off the top of my head. Okay, then I will ask for a motion.
What,
All right.
more?
Wait a minute,
Well,
Can you go back to number 12?
go back to number 12.
You didn't change the verbiage of this?
Well, I said, should we go to within 6 months, or does this one stay at 12 months for the granting of the CUP?
Yeah, we're gonna leave it at 12 because
think
of the mitigating of that
12.
20-foot wide piece of property and give them time to.
Of this is the
Straighten
whole
that
thing, that might take time.
Yeah, I think it should stay at 12.
So it should be all right.
Do you have a problem with that?
No, I
No.
don't. I was just reading
No.
this, the applicant shall improve, which would be landscaping, and begin
Yeah, but they
operating
have,
business
on
in
the other
accordance.
ones, they have 6 months.
Right, so you have contradicting conditions as
Well,
far as
this one
timelines.
is,
No, there's one section there that they still need time to complete this entire CUP.
shall improve and
so they
begin
need 12 months to do
operation.
that.
They say shall improve and begin operating the business in accordance with the submitted drawings, blah, 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 blah.
Is that not
within
landscaping?
Well, it's everything,
Okay,
within 12 months.
okay.
That's kind of a standard.
So come back, hey, look at
Yeah.
condition number 12. We're talking 90 days.
And that's 12 becomes 13? No,
No.
12
keeping
stays,
it
that's
all-
right.
yeah.
Okay. I'll call for a motion.
All right, Madam Chair?
Yes.
All right, I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve case CUP-5-18, a request for a conditional use permit by W4A Operations LLC, represented by Jack Gilmore, requesting to use their vacant B-5/PD zone property on West Fourth Avenue for the parking of trucks, semi-trucks, buses, and recreational vehicles, which are awaiting repair or pickup, incidental to their main large vehicle repair business at 3050 West Fourth Avenue, subject to the following findings and conditions of approval. The following findings. Number A, adequacy of roadways, off-street parking, public facilities and services to accommodate the proposed use. Commission has determined that there is adequate of all of those items. B, negative impacts arising from the emission of odor, dust, gas, noise, lighting, vibration, smoke, heat, or glare. Commission has determined that there is no negative impact from those events. C, contribution to the deterioration of the neighborhood or the negative impact on neighborhood property values. Commission has determined that there is no negative impact or contribution to deterioration. D, compatibility with surrounding uses and structures. Commission has found it's compatible. E, conformance with the general plan and city policies. Commission has determined that it does conform. F, screening and buffering of uses. Commission has determined that there is proper screening. And G, unique nature of this property, use and/or development's physical characteristics. Commission has determined that this does not apply. Then the conditions. All right, condition number 1 will remain as stated, as written. Condition 2 will remain as written with a statement at the end to read, well, let me read the last. Well,
It's all one.
yeah, it's all one. Okay, let me read condition 2. Said masonry wall in condition number 1 above shall reserve a proper gateway width to allow for adequate large vehicle turning movements into the property from West Fourth Avenue, subject to planning division and city engineer review and approval to mitigate use of any roads other than West Fourth Avenue. Condition 3 to remain as written. Condition 4 to be reworded. Within 90 days of CUP approval, outside of said masonry fencing facing West Fourth Avenue, the property owner shall submit a final landscaping plan and irrigation plan for improvements, and then within 6 months, the improvements will be entered, will be done, will be accomplished. All right. 5. 5, there will be only one correction, that is changing from within 1 year of CUP approval, it would be within 6 months of CUP approval. Condition 6, again, one change from within 1 year of CUP approval, it will be within 6 months of CUP approval. Number 7 to remain as written. And then numbers 8, 9, 10, and 11, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13 to remain as written. And then 14.
14, applicant will meet with city attorney to seek resolution to 20-foot parcel that divides properties within 90 days. City attorney will contact both parties and attempt mediation if parties want to meet.
And do we want to see this come back to us in 6 months, or do we just wait and see if it just doesn't?
We are allowing
fails?
12 months. This is conditions, we really can't change them, Kelly. We have to vote on the conditions, I guess.
Second, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
all my
that's-
conditions and
That's
findings.
his condition, so I'll call for a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Commissioner McGraw,
Yes.
Commissioner Kreidler,
No.
Commissioner Frank,
Yes.
Chairwoman Nesser,
Yes.
Commissioner Howard,
Yes.
Commissioner Schroeder,
Yes.
Vice Chair Heck.
Yes.
6 in favor, 1 opposed. The motion passes, Madam Chair.
Okay. We'll move on to old business. Is there any?
No, ma'am.
New business? Nothing. Information and reports?
Just a couple of quick ones. Let me get my bearings here. So just recall that for the active transportation plan, we're going to have a booth at the Festival of the Superstitions on Saturday, November 10th. If you're around, I'll be there with Dean from J2. And we're following up with another public information meeting November 10th. And then we're trying to kick off the general plan, and so I'll get you some more information about kind of an open house on November 27th.
Okay. Director's report?
I got this is my note on the front page. For Rudy. Okay, all right. Whoops. No, ma'am.
Selection of meeting dates, times, location, and purpose?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission hold a regular Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on November 13th, 2018 at 7 PM in the City Council chambers located at 300 East Superstition Boulevard.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote?
Commissioner Frank,
Yes.
Chairwoman Nesser,
Yes.
Commissioner Howard,
Yes.
Commissioner Schroeder,
Yes.
Vice Chair Heck,
Yes?
Commissioner McGraw,
Yes.
Commissioner Kreidler.
Yes.
So moved, Madam Chair.
And I will adjourn this meeting at 9:17 unless I hear any objection. Okay.